What's up, guys? Welcome into another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. I'm your host, EJ Holland, and we are going to be talking everything from Michigan transfer portal recruiting to regular recruiting. But before we do that, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free, get notifications every time we drop new videos, and also subscribe to the Wolverine.com. If you're not a subscriber right now, we have a special promo code for you. That's $1 for 2 months over at the Wolverine.com. Use that promo code UM1. That gets you exclusive insider information on everything that has to do with the team, recruiting, transfer portal, basketball, so much more. Plus, you get to be part of a great message board community with thousands and thousands of users. So subscribe today over at the Wolverine.com. All right, guys. So we already have questions. It's our first show of the new year. So let's get it started with Tyson Smith. And he says, what's the latest on Tai Haywood? So 5-star offensive tackle Tai Haywood out of Denton Ryan, Texas, is set to make an official visit to Michigan on January 17th. So about 10 days from now, according to our national analyst, Chad Simmons. Now, getting to Michigan was always in the cards for Haywood. I've always said this recruitment is really going to come down to NIL. You know, I think that Michigan is willing to play that game, and that's why they were able to generate a lot of interest with Haywood in December. He's never been to campus before, so this OV will be his first time in Ann Arbor. He is still committed to Alabama on paper, but I don't expect him to sign with the Crimson Tide. I think that Michigan is in a really strong position to flip him. And I would say a bigger threat than Alabama is probably Texas Tech. Texas Tech has also had some NIL discussions with Haywood. I think that they are willing to increase what they presented earlier in the year. So I think the Red Raiders are one to watch. And then Florida State has entered this race as well. So, Florida State is another team to watch. I'm sure a few other schools will try to get involved too. But as of right now, I think Michigan remains the favorite in this race. So it's going to really come down to, how the visit goes, but also, what Michigan is willing to do with NIL. I think that is by far the most important part of this recruitment. All right, Tyson Smith says, why didn't we get Skyler Bell? So Skyler Bell was in the portal, wide receiver from UConn. It was expected to land at Michigan. I put in a prediction for the Wolverines, and had everything gone according to plan, I fully expected him to sign with Michigan. I think that was in the cards. Michigan was the only school that Skyler Bell visited in December, and it looked like everything was going to work out until it didn't. There were some issues with credits and them transferring over to Michigan, and had Bell tried to transfer to Michigan, he wouldn't have been able to get here in time for spring ball, so he ended up staying at UConn. So it wasn't really an admissions thing as much as it was a credits thing. And so, we'll see. Maybe Michigan tries to get Bell again during the spring transfer portal window. Remember, there is another portal window. It opens up in the spring. So maybe you can see Michigan try to make a move there again. But yeah, everything was pointing towards Michigan landing Skyler Bell until they ran into that credits issue. So not really the staff's fault. Nothing you can really do if, it doesn't work out from an academic perspective. And that's not to say that Skyler Bell is a bad student or anything like that. I think everything was fine with his grades. It was just credits transferring over from university to university. Tyson Smith says, did you see Nosferatu? Yes, I did. I went to theaters. I saw it on opening night, on Christmas night. So it was fun. Like I've said before, I'm a big indie film fan. So I enjoyed it. It's not for everybody. I've seen mixed reviews. It is a Robert Eggers film, so if you haven't seen his films like The Northman and The Witch, I would recommend watching those first before you go to Nosferatu. It's definitely not this. I know it's kind of made out to be with the trailers and the promo, but it's not a huge like Hollywood blockbuster production. It's, I think, more just low key what you would expect from an indie film. And it's filmed a certain way, much like his previous films. So if you haven't watched Nosferatu, I would recommend it, but don't go in there thinking it's going to be like a Marvel movie. Ava Dedavanaj says, how do you feel about Albert Hill? So Albert Hill, 5-star corner out of Ohio, made a visit to Michigan this fall. The Wolverines are back in the picture here after kind of falling out of it for a little while. Hill hadn't made it to campus in like a year until he made a game day visit this fall. And that's because he didn't really know new secondary coach Lamar Morgan. Morgan's been recruiting him harder as of late. They've been able to quickly build up a relationship. So I think Michigan's in the thick of things here. At the same time, you know, anytime you're recruiting the number one cornerback in the country, that's going to require some NIL. On top of that, he's from Ohio, so Ohio State is obviously considered the heavy favorite. Remember, Michigan made runs at Bryce West and Aaron Scott, and those recruitments never worked out. So they're trying to do it again with Albert Hill and Victor Singleton, who's another Ohio kid, though he's from Toledo, so maybe a better chance there, just proximity to Michigan. But with Albert Hill, I think that, you know, Archbishop Hoban has been friendly to the Buckeyes. I think Ohio State's going to be tough to beat in this recruitment, but Hill has shown a willingness to explore other options, but they've been kind of more NIL options. Like Oregon has been very heavily involved in this recruitment. So I would say it's going to be a tough recruitment to win. Michigan is going to have to play the NIL game here and just keep getting them to campus. I think if they're able to land Victor Singleton, who I feel like they have a better shot with, then that would help with Hill because they are friends and spent a lot of that Michigan visit together. In fact, Hill and Singleton actually met at a Michigan camp. So I think the way to Hill is probably to win over Singleton first. Ava Dedavanaj says, do you think we get Ryder Lyons in for the visit? That's a hope. That's the hope. Ryder Lyons, 5-star quarterback in the 2026 recruiting class. He is an LDS kid, which means he'll be taking a mission upon graduation. So he's graduating early in December, and the hope would be for him to make a 1.5-year mission, I guess, which would put him in the 27 class as opposed to the 28 class. Normally, if you're an LDS prospect, it's a 2-year mission and it's a 2-year wait. With Lyons, it looks like he's trying to do kind of a little bit of an accelerated mission, I guess. Either way, he wouldn't be on campus until 2027 or 2028. So I think that's a good thing because that means Bryce Underwood's signing won't really have an impact on him. There'll be that gap between the time, you know, Underwood's on campus and Lyons would theoretically get to campus. But I think it's going to be a tough recruitment to win. Regardless, USC is considered a top contender early on. His brother's there. So, you know, he's a West Coast kid. I'm sure he'll have plenty of other options. I'm sure BYU will make a big run, obviously, with his religious affiliation. I'm sure Oregon will be heavily involved, but Michigan is working to get him on campus. Chip Lindsey has been in contact. Before he was fired, Kurt Campbell went out to California to see Ryder Lyons. It was very close to getting him on campus. So Michigan is a school of interest for him. And last question from Ava Dedavanaj. How do you feel about Jackson Cantwell? So I had a chance to go out to see Cantwell for the first time live last week for the Under Armour All-America game. He's, you know, big kid, 6'7.5", 305 pounds. You know, watching him, he's kind of a surprising twist, I guess, in what are his strengths. So, you know, being a pure tackle, I expected him to be really, really elite when it came to pass pro and his feet. And honestly, that's the part of his game that probably needs the most work. He's a big kid. He knows how to use his size to his advantage. He's extremely strong. He's very physical. as a run blocker. I think with Cantwell, the athleticism is there. It's just about improving his feet and technique. I'm not sure I'm fully on board with him being the number one overall prospect in the country, but I do think he's a 5-star level prospect. And obviously, if you're able to pair Andrew Babalola with a guy like Jackson Cantwell, then, you're kind of set at that position moving forward. Not to mention Tai Haywood, who I think will probably be a right tackle or a guard at the next level, but that's quite an offensive line there. Now, as far as where Michigan stands, I would say they're somewhere around the top 5. I think there are a lot of contenders here, so we're going to have to really wait until Cantwell schedules those official visits, but he did tell me that Michigan is certainly in the mix for an OV. He's looking to make a return visit maybe this offseason before summer official visits really start. I think this is one where Sherrone Moore will have to win on his own, much like he did with Andrew Babalola, and that's no offense to Grant Newsome. I think Newsome can continue to, build a good relationship with Cantwell and be very active in his recruitment, but I think Sherrone Moore is the closer. He's the guy with the resume, the accolades, and, is the head coach. So I think Moore would have to win it for Michigan. And I also think the NIL piece will be significant too. Cantwell's already signed with an agency, so that's going to be something to watch too. And I'm just curious to see how Michigan handles NIL this cycle with these bigger prospects like Cantwell. It seems like Sean McGee, you've seen it in the transfer portal, has been more budget oriented. So Michigan isn't really splurging or doing these massive deals like they did with Bryce, though I would expect them to do it with Haywood. But it seems like they're kind of balancing a checkbook as opposed to just firing the money cannon. So I'm curious to see what it looks like for recruiting in 2026. John A. Schultz says, EJ, Malachi Lee, tell me we're landing him. Malachi Lee is another interesting prospect. So he's an on 300 offensive tackle out of Hawaii. And what's interesting about him is, like Ryder Lyons, he is an LDS kid. I don't know what his mission plans are. And next time I talk to him, that's something that's going to be at the top of my list to ask him is he going on a 2-year mission after graduation? Because if he is, that would make him a 2028 recruit. So he wouldn't arrive to Ann Arbor until 2028. If that's the case, that kind of sucks for Michigan because, they've invested a lot of resources into him early on, and obviously would love to have him join the group immediately. But I have seen kids opt to wait to take their mission. I actually covered an offensive lineman at Texas, Junior Angelo, and he was set to take a 2-year mission. Texas convinced him not to, and he ended up getting to campus right away. So there are instances where LDS kids wait and do their mission later in life, which, I think from my experience I'm not LDS, but from my experience on the Andrew Gentry mission, when I went and spent a week with him in Utah, is that the church does hope that you take the mission, but is okay if you opt to wait. So, but most, kids do take it after graduation, from my understanding. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm just speaking from my time with Gentry. In terms of where Michigan stands, though, I think they're at the top of the list early on. He's already made a couple of visits to Ann Arbor. Like I've said, they've poured a ton of resources into this recruitment early on. Michigan's won recruitments in Hawaii before. They obviously were able to pluck Roman Wilson. I think they can do the same with Malachi Lee. But like I said, my biggest thing is he a 26 kid or is he going to technically be a 28 kid? Vijay says, will Tristan Keys visit in this ring? So 5-star wide receiver Tristan Keys out of Mississippi was actually set to visit in the fall and then ended up canceling that visit. Travel plans fell through and then he never made it to campus. So Michigan is being very aggressive in trying to get Keys on campus. Again, I think this one is going to be a very NIL heavy recruitment, especially every Southern school major program you can think of is going to be involved, and rightfully so. I saw Tristan Keys at the Under Armour All-America game as well, and he was fantastic. But I think Michigan has some ground to make up. I think right now Michigan is kind of selling hope, right? The hope that Bryce Underwood will live up to the 5-star billing, the hope that Chip Lindsey will open up the offense. And is hope enough with Tristan Keys? Because you're going to have to pair that hope with a lot of NIL. But is that enough? Because I'm sure a lot of schools are going to be willing to put up similar NIL in this recruitment. So, Michigan's not doing really well at wide receiver recruiting in the portal. They need to get Bryce some weapons. Tristan Keys is that guy in 26. So, he has been planning to visit Michigan for a while, so it would be great if they are able to get him on campus this spring. Ryland T31 says, "Go Blue." Saw an article in a corner from Washington as a transfer having Michigan as a final school. Any truth to that? And if you know this corner, is he any good? Yeah, the corner is Thaddius Dixon. He is ranked as the number 1 corner in the transfer portal, and he did list Michigan in his top 5. The interesting thing about Thaddius Dixon is, one, he hasn't ruled out a return to Washington. So that is certainly still in play. Washington did land Takario Davis, who was another transfer corner that was very highly ranked as well, that Michigan was actually pursuing. So maybe that gives Thaddius Dixon a little bit more of a leaving energy, but he didn't, rule out a return to Washington. Our On3 transfer portal insider, Pete Nakos, reported that Dixon is very close to setting up a visit with North Carolina. So we'll see, how that goes. North Carolina already landed a Washington transfer earlier this portal cycle in Kamari House, who was also a Michigan target. Yeah, I think Michigan's in the mix here, but I'm still doing kind of some digging, and obviously they need to get him on campus to have a shot. John A. Schultz says, EJ, is Newsom visiting any other recruits? I don't know why he is. He visits Malachi Lee. I'm not sure if he stopped to see any other recruits while he was out there, but it was a quick trip because this morning he was in Georgia seeing Bear McWhorter, a 3-star offensive lineman. So I'm not sure if he saw any other guys, but he has seen Lee and he has seen Bear McWhorter. John A. Schultz says, EJ, are you a non? I am not a non. Over at the Wolverine, we have several Anon accounts, including a prominent Anon. But as you guys know, I say everything off of my Twitter account and off of my username on the Wolverine. I have no reason for burner accounts because if you look at my mentions, it's all crazy stuff that comes directly from me. EJ, any shot Michigan gets the wide receiver from Louisiana Tech? So that would be True Edwards. Big fan of True Edwards. I don't get to watch a lot of college football because I'm always out on the road seeing recruits on the weekend. So I put up a little bit of game film of True Edwards, and he's pretty exciting, man. I really liked his stuff. I think he would be an impact player in Michigan's wide receiver room. He's listed at 6'2", 200. Looks a little taller than that. Looks like he's like 6'3", 6'3 and a half. He's a big physical receiver on the outside, but he's a playmaker with the ball in his hands. There were a couple of plays where I just saw him, on tunnel screens or just little drags over the middle and just made hell of plays after the catch. He's difficult to bring down in the open field. It looks like he has good speed for his size too. Now, he did make a visit to Kentucky over the weekend. He told me he might visit Michigan. They have been expressing interest. Ron Bellamy, Michigan's wide receivers coach, is obviously from Louisiana. True Edwards, though he went to high school in Texas, is actually from Louisiana as well. So there's a bit of a connection there. But also, True Edwards played at Mansfield Legacy in Texas, which is in Dallas-Fort Worth. And Michigan assistant J.B. Brown and staffer James Brown, who's JB's father, have a lot of ties to Mansfield, Texas. James was a longtime head coach in Mansfield. So those connections could help the Wolverines there as well. I'm sure James and JB know the staff that worked with True Edwards at Mansfield Legacy. So, yeah, I mean, I know that True knows there's a big need at wide receiver at Michigan. So, he's certainly in play, but they have to turn that might visit into a will visit. By Jay says, are Hill or Singleton on Earl's level? I know both are smaller corners than Earl's. Yeah, they are kind of smaller, speedier corners. I guess like a DJ Turner or somebody like that. I don't know. I haven't seen either live, so I will reserve judgment. I personally like bigger, taller corners. That's why I loved Will. That's why I loved Shamari. That's why I loved Derek Stingley. Keely Ringo were some of my favorite corners to cover. I'm always a bigger, longer corner fan. So I don't know. I would have to see more of them in person before I make those comparisons. D-Block So says, EJ, will Michigan 2025 recruiting class be top 5? Right now, the 2025 class is ranked number 9. If they are able to add Tai Haywood and Zaire Mathis, I think that would push them at least very close to the top 5. So it's certainly still a possibility. Johnny Schultz says, EJ, would you rather have Ohio State win the national championship over Notre Dame? Yes. Bruce McGraw says, what do you consider the most reputable and most accurate recruiting service? A good documentary shows that the majority of high-profile recruits don't necessarily pan out in the NFL. I think Charles Power, our rankings director, put out a really good stat that showed that the recruiting rankings are pretty accurate, at least when it comes to grading 5 stars and really high 4 stars. But the best recruiting service is obviously On3, and that's a good time to tell you guys, if you're not a subscriber to the Wolverine, you can subscribe today using the promo code UM1. That's $1 for 2 months over at thewolverine.com. Get exclusive insider information on everything recruiting, transfer portal, the team, basketball, so much more. Plus, you get to be part of a message board with more than 8,000 users. Use that promo code UM1. And also, if you haven't already, we have more than 200 people watching, so make sure to like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel for free. All right, next question comes from Vijay. And also, guys, if you want to skip the line, we have about 7 minutes left. So if you want to skip the line, make sure to hit that little box with the dollar symbol that gives you a super chat, which allows you to skip the line. That money also goes directly to my travel budget so I can continue to go to events like the Under Armour All-American game. All right, Vijay says, is Trey Taylor a top 100 player in 2027 for you? He's not on 3's early rankings. It is early for 27, but I do think Trey Taylor has really progressed physically. I remember when I first saw Trey Taylor, he was tiny. He was like 5'7", 140. And now he's about 6'1", 6'2". He's filling out his frame nicely. I thought he showed some really good stuff this past season as the starter at Carmel Catholic from the clips that I was able to see. He actually threw in front of Chip Lindsey today. So, yeah, I mean, I think he can be that type of talent. I think it's tough the toughest position to grade early is quarterback, because sometimes you get enamored with guys and they kind of peak. You saw that with Jaden Davis, right? Even me, I was guilty of that too. I loved Jaden Davis, and then I didn't love Jaden Davis. So sometimes those early quarterback rankings are very deceiving. Sometimes guys aren't even really on the radar too much, and then they ascend as top-level guys. So I think it's early, but I think Trey has shown some really good stuff early on. He works with the same quarterback trainer as Bryce Underwood. Shout out to Donovan Dooley. So, yeah, I do think that Trey is a talented guy that'll be in that top 100 mix, but we'll kind of have to wait and see how, things progress with 2027 quarterbacks. Ryland T, 31, says, percent chance that Michigan lands Javen Osborne and Savon Haider. I would say it's like 40-60 right now is what I set the early odds. I think that with Javen Osborne first, it's still a really tough battle between Michigan and Texas, and his decision timeline isn't until early summer. So we'll see how official visits go. I think we also need to see who makes a decision first. And what if another running back like Amari Latimer or Jonathan Hatton or somebody like that randomly picks Michigan early on, which wouldn't be so random with Amari Latimer or even Javian Mallory. Those guys, are still pretty high on the board. And if they want to decide, does Michigan not take them? Do they take them knowing that Osborne and Haider are on the board? So kind of a fascinating situation for Tony Alford. What I'll say is they are very open to playing with each other. I think with Osborne, Texas is the clear threat. I think with Haider, Michigan has more of an outright lead than they do with Osborne. I think, Osborne kind of backed off the comment that he made that Michigan led and then told me a few days later, it's really tight between Michigan and Texas. With Haider, I think he was just like, I don't care, Michigan leads. I think, again, they are open to playing with each other. They complement each other really well. Savon is very physical between the tackles, though he can catch the ball as well and is very explosive. Javian's more of a smaller back. Savion's 5'11.5", more than 200 pounds. That 190 listing is old. He's more than 200 pounds. He's yoked up. Javen is more of a smaller back at about 5'9", 175. He ran a sub 11 100 meter last year despite having a hamstring issue. So he's fast. He's a guy that's underrated between the tackles, but there's a lot you can do with his speed. And like I said, I think they complement each other really, really well, but we'll kind of have to wait and see how everything plays out. Savon, like Javen, doesn't plan to make a decision until sometime in June. All right, let's go down to Phil O says, are we going to land a starting left tackle, quarterback, and wide receiver out of the portal? I'm assuming. Tackle options are really, they've diminished. The only real tackle out there is Shy-As Pete, but there were some interesting tackle options that entered the portal earlier today. So I think you'll see that board expand. Corner, obviously, they're in play for Thaddius Dixon, but I think they need to give themselves some more options after missing out on Riley Gandy, who's going to Indiana. And wide receiver, man, they have to find some guys. It was really tough seeing Skyler Bell's credit issue and then seeing David Pantelis pick Stanford over Michigan. So those were some, bullets to their wide receiver pursuits. So we're going to have to just see what names really pop up. It's getting a little late here with classes right around the corner. Cole Usitalo says, is Michigan's Haywood's last visit? Michigan is the only scheduled official visit. So I don't know if it'll be the last visit. It is on January 17th. There's a weekend after that. So January 24th would be the last visit weekend before signing day. So I think we have to wait and see if he's going to schedule an OV to Texas Tech, if he's going to schedule an OV to Florida State, if there's another school that, gets in the mix here, we'll have to wait. But Michigan's the only scheduled OV. All right, let's go rapid fire, guys. We only have about a minute left. Phil O says, will Devin Baxter, a Merrick Kumba, or Lugard Edekpayi play significant snaps next year? Maybe not significant, but I think they all have a chance to get in the rotation. Vijay says, it seems like wanted 2 quarterbacks this cycle. Can we expect them to always go after 2, one highly ranked and one developmental? Not necessarily. They haven't done that too much in the past. Obviously, they took 2 this cycle with Bryce and Chase Herbstreit, but I think it depends cycle to cycle. It's going to be tough to get a highly touted guy to come in after Bryce Underwood, so I would kind of manage expectations there. Let's go down to Vijay. He says, any chance we re-engage Brady Smigel? I think he was high on Michigan before we took heart. Yeah, Chip Lindsey actually offered Brady Smigel at North Carolina. He also offered Troy Hoon, who is committed to Penn State. Both Smigel and Hoon have visited Michigan in the past, so maybe they circle back and try to make contact with both of those guys. But we'll see. Like I said, I would kind of manage expectations with quarterback recruiting in 26. All right, that was actually the last question. So appreciate you guys for joining. Remember, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to thewolverine.com, and we'll be back next week.